Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. Kelly Daughtry and Brad Knott are locked in a battle for the Republican nomination in a Triangle area congressional district. Neither got enough votes during the March primary election to earn the nomination outright, so they're headed for a runoff on May 14th. As the runoff approaches, they're hammering each other over their backgrounds, focusing on who might be the more liberal candidate. WRAL State Government Reporter Paul Spey has been covering the race, and he joins us now to break it down for us. Paul, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
To frame this, I want to start off with understanding the 13th Congressional District. It's represented by a Democrat, but it's almost certain to flip to a Republican in November. Walk us through what the district looks like. What changed?
Right. Back in 2022, it was more of a contiguous district located in the southeastern part of the Triangle. So it had some of southeastern Wake County, it had Johnston, and it had Harnett. And those were the main counties that it covered. And it was considered a toss-up district. And that's how Democrat Wiley Nickel won it. He beat out Republican Bo Hines back in 2022. Unfortunately for him, I guess, the next year, Republicans in the state legislature decided to redistrict the state. So that means they redrew the election maps for Congress and for the legislature. There's a House and a Senate there. And they gave their own party, Republicans, an advantage in a lot more districts, and that includes the 13th. So when they redrew the 13th, they threw in a lot more districts. It now includes not only Johnston and Harnett and some of Wake. It also includes Franklin County and several counties up along the border, along the Virginia border, as well as Lee County, southwest of Wake County. So it's a lot more sprawling now. And if you look at it on a map, it looks like a fish hook. And so not only does it favor Republicans, they're almost guaranteed to win this general election.
Which is perhaps why there was such a crowded field during the Republican primary. Now, that's led to a runoff because there were so many candidates and those votes were really spread out. Who's still in the race?
Right. So there were 14 candidates, and they all saw this in this new district as a huge opportunity with no Democratic incumbent running, and another point here, no current office holder running. A bunch of political newcomers signed up, and that included Kelly Daughtry and Brad Knott. Now, they're attorneys. Kelly Daughtry has a private practice, and Brad Knott has been a federal prosecutor dating back to 2016. And so they emerged out of that primary on March 5th, sort of for different reasons. Daughtry has some personal wealth, and people say that she's had the advantage financially over the entire field. She's also from Johnston County, whereas Brad Knott, they say he's sort of capitalizing on a political moment where Republicans are really focused on crime and immigration and even tying those together, attempting to tie those together. And so he's, called upon his background and said, hey, I'm an experienced federal prosecutor. I put drug dealers away. I've dealt with illegal immigrants, and I'm the guy to deal with these issues right now.
Does either of them have an edge?
It's hard to say. Daughtry is from the district. Knott lives outside of it. He does not live in the district. He's from Raleigh, which is not included in the district. But we should say that doesn't prevent you from running for Congress. You can live outside of a district. But Knott is endorsed by Trump, and that does mean something, especially in races like this where, they're political newcomers. People don't really know them. They don't have a brand or anything like that, so that's expected to carry him a long way. Meanwhile, Daughtry had the money, and that stands true even today, where she is running ad after ad after ad, including on our own airwaves. And it's taken Knott a while to catch up, at least in advertising.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear about how Brad Knott and Kelly Daughtry are trying to win Republican voters. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL State Government Reporter Paul Spey about the race for the GOP nomination in North Carolina's 13th Congressional District. Paul, on paper, the Republican candidates in the 13th District are fairly similar, lawyers from politically connected families. Both grew up near the core of the triangle. How are they trying to stand out on the issues? What are they prioritizing?
Well, as I mentioned, Knott is mentioning his experience as a federal prosecutor. He was an assistant U.S. attorney, and those are not the political ones. There are U.S. attorneys who are appointed under every president. They're considered political appointees. He was an assistant U.S. attorney, and they're hired just like any other federal employee, really. And that means he got to take on cases in North Carolina's Eastern District. We have 3 districts that each have a different U.S. attorney sort of leading those offices. But the Eastern District covers 44 counties, mostly from Raleigh to the coast. And there are press releases out there even before he ran for Congress where the Eastern District said, hey, we got convictions on this drug dealer or this trafficker or this guns trafficker and all this stuff. And so that's how what he's bringing to the table. He's saying, look at my work as this federal prosecutor. I put people away. I got good sentences. He's mentioned that in almost every ad. Meanwhile, you have Daughtry on the other side who is sort of, rather than saying, I'm the best for the moment, she's saying, I'm the best for the district. And of course, I'm generalizing and paraphrasing here, but that's sort of what her ads suggest. They show her in a pickup truck driving down a dirt road along a farm fence. They're both, they've both worn like barn jackets in their ads, but she, in one of her ads, she even has a narrator who says, Kelly Daughtry learned conservative values from growing up in rural North Carolina. And so she's clearly trying to get those rural voters, and there are a lot more now than there used to be back before redistricting.
They're also making immigration part of their talking points. What are they saying?
Right. They're saying, that they want to, they claim that the border's open. We've addressed this in WRAL and with PolitiFact. It's not completely open, obviously. There's a lot of people coming to the border, and they have claims to asylum, and that means a lot of them get to come in the country while they await their court date. But they want stricter rules. They both say they want stricter rules, and they both want to crack down on crime and things like that. So, with all these similarities, they're left pointing out each other's differences, right? And that's where the attack ads come in.
A WRAL news poll showed that immigration was kind of further down the list of things that most voters were concerned about. Now, we're miles and miles and miles from the southern border. Why are they focusing on that issue?
They're focusing on issues like immigration because that's considered a top issue to Republicans. And while the primary in North Carolina is open to Republicans and unaffiliated voters alike, it's typically the most hardcore voters that actually show up to the polls, especially when it's not November, right? So that's one reason that they're targeting the people who care most about the purest of Republican candidates, if you will. And that's why you see things like crime and immigration. Both of those things are issues. But as you mentioned, if we were to poll all voters, then the Democratic group would probably send healthcare into the top 3. It would send abortion into the top 3, things like that. But you're not going to see that very much in this race.
They've also tried to paint each other as more liberal. What's going on there? Tell us about that.
Right. With so many similarities in their platforms and obviously with a focus on these most conservative of voters, they're going to try to, claim that they're the purest of the Republican crop. And so Daughtry has pointed out that Brad Knott didn't participate in the 2016 or 2020 Republican primaries. So she suggests that, by skipping them, he doesn't love Trump or, obviously didn't come to bat for him those years. Of course, Knott says it was an oversight. He meant to go vote. Doesn't remember why he didn't show up, but he's sure he had some sort of good reason. And Daughtry's also attacking Knott for working as an assistant U.S. attorney. Now, as we mentioned, those are not political jobs, but they suggest he was taking a paycheck from the federal government under the Biden administration and working for quote unquote Biden's DOJ, hoping that will turn people off. Obviously, Knott is doing his part to explain that the the job of a federal prosecutor is not to be beholden to Biden unless you're one of the political appointees. And then on the other hand, Knott is going after Daughtry for donating to Democrats in previous elections, like Josh Stein, he's the attorney general, who's now running for governor, and Sherry Beasley, a former state Supreme Court justice who ran for U.S. Senate. Daughtry says those were meaningless, just sort of part of doing business with other attorneys and being friendly. She points out that Trump once donated to Democrats too before he ran for president. So they're both trying to just throw this mud on the other candidate, and that's sort of where we are right now. If you turn on the TV, you're going to see an ad geared toward Republicans who might be repulsed by any cooperation or friendliness with Democrats.
And this is sort of an age-old strategy in primaries, right?
It is. It is an age-old strategy, and perhaps more so in a race like this where it's at a weird time. It's not Super Tuesday anymore. It's May 14th. Very few people are paying attention. Even when I went out into the field and talked to voters, very few people knew who Daughtry or Knott really were, or when the election was, or anything like that. So, people need to be fired up to vote. And so it's very unlikely that these two political newcomers are going to have, just hordes of voters coming to support them on a random Tuesday in May.
So really, it's just the small turnout, and the ones who are going to be turning out, those are the most energized, the most attuned to what's going on in their party, right?
Right.
Now, as we've discussed, the candidates have been focused a lot on immigration and border security. And you mentioned that you went out and spoke with some voters in the district one morning. What's on their minds?
I went up to the Hometown Cafe in Franklinton the other day, and I went for breakfast. And they have, not to give any personal endorsements here, but they have some great breakfast food. It's a popular place if you want to start the day with like a hearty breakfast, or just sit around and drink coffee and talk. There were some retirees there. They have TVs on. They actually had WRAL on the TV, and so the owners were so nice. They let me, when people were done with their meals, just go talk to people and ask, like, hey, have you heard about this runoff? And most people said no, and I asked if they planned to vote, and most people sort of demurred and said, no, I don't know, maybe not, and I asked, what would it take? And a lot of people said, well, I've got kids, I work late sometimes. My priority is getting home to see my kids, or, I have these other things to do. And what day is it again? It just gets lost in the shuffle. And it goes back to what we said earlier. Unless these candidates and are fired up about one of them, or if you hate one of them, you're probably not going to take time out of your day to go vote or even to go research, because especially with a district that's been redrawn to give Republicans an advantage, if you're just the average Republican, do you really care which one it is? You may not.
Now, you spoke with one woman who says that she is probably going to vote. What was her top concern?
Yes, she was 60 years old. She was sitting there eating at brunch around 11 o'clock, and she said, well, to her, it was simple. It's the economy. The price of everything has gone up in recent years. And, why that is a discussion for another day. But she wanted to hear answers. How can gas go back down? How can groceries go back down? Her energy bills are up. She said she lives in a home without insulation. And so she also said she's on a fixed income. And so with inflation going up so much, she has to pinch pennies, and as she put it, I have to figure it out every month to pay my bills. I have to figure it out. And she would love some help with that. But, if you're looking for answers in this race, you'll have to go digging. They're in our WRAL's voter guide. They're on these candidates' web pages. But that's not really what's being talked about in these political ads.
And there aren't a lot of specifics in their solutions, right?
Right. They talk about wanting to reduce government spending. Obviously, Biden put out a stimulus package back when the pandemic still had a stronghold on the economy, and Republicans sort of blame that for inflation, although there have a multitude of other factors, including, Russia invading Ukraine. But yeah, you won't find specific bills, for instance, or other proposals other than, stop the government from spending more money, causing inflation to go up.
Do you get any sense that your friend in Franklinton is going to vote, or who she's leaning towards?
No, I asked her that twice. She participated in the March primary and said she thought that she voted for Kelly Daughtry. She wasn't quite sure, but she thinks it was Daughtry. Remember, there's a bunch of other stuff on the ballot back on Super Tuesday. And this time she vowed to show up again. And she said it's her duty, it's her civic duty, especially as a woman. She said, women for a long time didn't have the right to vote. And now that they do have it, she's going to exercise it. And, she's one of these people. She supported Barack Obama back in the day. And then she said she supported Donald Trump. And so she said his endorsement, may play a role in who she decides to support. Obviously, Knott got that endorsement, but she wants to hear more substance. She vowed to me that she'll keep watching it, and that she will show up with a vote for one of the two. We'll see.
Well, we're going to keep watching it too. Going to be a very interesting month ahead. Paul, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
That's WRAL State Government Reporter Paul Spey for his coverage of the GOP runoff in the 13th Congressional District. And for details on how and where to vote, go to the NC Capital section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.